Well, we have the Bible, God's special revelation. He hasn't just left it in the original languages. He works through human beings to bring us good translations. And now we have the Bible. We mentioned earlier it's one of the best-selling books of all time. But what does it say? We don't want to just rely on what people tell us about the Bible. We want to go to the Bible itself, say, well, what is the Bible telling us? What's so important in this special revelation? Well, one of the first things the Bible talks about that's important for us to understand is who is God. It tells us about God. We can know God through the Bible, through His special revelation. And we know something about God's nature. Now God's nature is captured in a name that He gives Himself, a name that He reveals first to the prophet Moses. You're probably familiar with the story of Moses as he's out in the desert. And he had already left Egypt. He'd been away from Egypt for 40 years. This nomadic, quiet, solitary life, but God intervenes and God calls him back into service. And he encounters God in a bush that is burning but not consumed by the fire. And God tells Moses, I'm sending you to Egypt. I'm sending you to, deliver my people from slavery. And Moses wants to know God's name. Who are you? What should I say? What kind of name can I put on you? And God gives him a name. And the name is Yahweh. Yahweh. And you see in the graphic, the Hebrew letters that spell out Yahweh. And if you were to take the word Yahweh, which often gets translated as I am, it's bigger than that. It's the existing one from whom all things that exist derive their existence. That tells us something about God's nature. He is the one in whom we exist. Everything holds together in Him. Everyone has their being in Him. He didn't just create the universe, He sustains it. He's the source of all life. He is the existing one, the Yahweh, this big, huge name of God. That name that was so sacred to the Jewish people, they wouldn't speak it. They were afraid to speak it because God's name was holy as He is holy. That's the name He gives us that shows a little bit about His nature. He also wants us to understand something else about Him. While many world religions, many cultures talk about gods, He reveals Himself as the only God. In Isaiah 45, He says, I am the Lord, and there is no other. Apart from me, there is no God. I will strengthen you, though you have not acknowledged me, so that from the rising of the sun to the place of its setting, men may know there is none beside me. I am the Lord, and there is no other. I don't know if you counted how many times God said it, but it hopefully sunk in. There is no other. He's the only one. He revealed Himself as the only God. And so really important to understand something about God. He's not just the best of the gods. We just don't want to follow Him because He's greater than the other gods. He is the only God. And we also know from the Bible that God's nature is different than ours. We are body and soul, or we say material and immaterial, but God doesn't have a body. He is solely immaterial. He is spirit. And so, very different than us. God's nature, His very essence, is different than our nature and our essence. He's not just a man, not a great man. He's not a God who was once a man, who became God. He is fundamentally, in His essence, different than us. Well, we can talk about what God is and isn't. The Bible reveals much more about God, but in the end, we're kind of we just have to stop in awe and say our God is marvelous. He's majestic. He's awesome. He's more than we can take in. But we have the Bible to show us some insight into the nature of God.